Hello, guys. I'm Forrest Purdom, and today I'm talking about different techniques and why we've settled on the balance based technique. So, as most people know, there's a lot of different ways to work with dogs, from positive only to no treats at all and alpha based. I'm just going to dominate the dog. So when I first started rescuing, I actually rescued a lab pit bull mix. He was abused quite a bit in his first home. He would be beaten if he went to the bathroom in the house. He definitely did not have a good life. I pet him and I would love on him when I first met him. And one day he just happened to follow me home. And he's actually right up here. It's a little dark because he was a black pit lab mix. He followed me home. He was a fantastic dog, but of course he had a lot of issues because of his first home and just simply having a lack of training. So I had, from back then, I can't remember what year this was now. This was back in 2012 or so. He would pull. He didn't bark too much, thankfully, but his biggest issue in the beginning when I got him was he was a puller when he was on a leash. He probably had never been on a leash before, I wouldn't doubt, or if it was, it wasn't much. So my first instinct was to go back and watch Cesar Millan because he was on TV. I had watched him when I was younger. My mom watched him and showed him to me. So I thought, oh, I know. There was that one dude I watched. I'll go find some of his videos. And I actually spent a lot of time watching his videos. And by a lot, I mean a lot. I studied the fuck out of this guy. I rewatched his show easily 10 times or more, probably more, because to me, I wanted to know everything and I wanted to really embrace what the guy was teaching. And I felt the only way to get better was to watch more of his videos and just see what he was doing. And of course, when you watch it once, you're only going to retain a certain percentage. I don't know what that percentage is, but it ain't much compared to watching it 10 more times. And of course, doing it. So I then started practicing a lot of his techniques. And I don't know how long I used mainly just alpha-based techniques, but it was around 10 years that was, or sorry, 5 years that was my focus. And I was one of those people that believed, you shouldn't need treats. You don't need treats. Your dog should just listen to do stuff for you because you said it. That's kind of what I thought. Before I even watched the guy, that's what I thought. So that's probably why I connected with his training as well. And as I worked more with dogs, I realized that, there was a lot of other techniques out there that I wanted to try. And so about 5 years into it, I started educating myself more on a balanced based technique. And I started transitioning more into that balance category. I did do alpha-based strategies at times, but the more I worked with dogs, the more I found that a lot of the things Cesar said just wasn't true. Maybe it was his English, his broken English, and he meant a certain thing, but the way he was saying it in English, we interpret it differently. But I found that the things that he said, for instance, he would categorize most things as the dog just being dominant. And as I rescued and trained more dogs, because it went from, Atticus up to, 20 plus dogs, I found that within my pack, it wasn't all dominance. When you got 20 dogs and you're working with each dog, you see the different nuances, the different behaviors play out in different ways. And I noticed that some dogs were acting a certain way out of pure fear. He would call it fear dominance. He would be like, oh, the dog's afraid, and so he's acting in dominance. But I saw that as not true. I found that the dog was fearful, and so it was reacting in a way it thought it needed to react to get an outcome. For instance, the dog would be afraid of someone touching their scruff of their neck. I rescued a husky, and he came to me without a collar on. And when I first reached for him, even though he had a collar on at this point, to move him, he would squeal really loudly and he would shut down. This dog wasn't dominant at all. He was afraid. He was scared because he got pulled on, and he, to him, thought, oh no, I'm going to get pulled on by this new person. So there was no dominance in this dog. He did a lot of other things too that was not dominance. Oh, gross. Dogs over here. So to me, I found that a lot of the stuff that he was teaching just wasn't true. Also, I noticed the more I worked with people, because about 6 years into it, I actually broke my arm. And I had a friend of mine that she was like, oh my gosh, well, do you have time to work with my dog? Because I couldn't do what I was doing previously for work. I was a landscaper. I couldn't physically go out and do all the things I used to do. So I said, yeah, I could still work with a dog. I think I had 18 or so at that time. I can't quite remember the number. But I knew I could work with a dog even though I was still healing on a broken arm. So I said, yeah, I'll take on your dog. She had an aggressive dog, and she had a dog that was actually herding horses. She saw it as aggression. She thought she was aggressive towards horses. But the minute I met her, I realized that she wasn't trying to be aggressive towards my horse. She was trying to herd my horse. And she was a herding breed. So only made sense. And after I worked with them, of course, I had no issues working with the dogs, snapping them out of their aggression. One dog was dog aggressive, and he ended up living with my pack just fine. I took him on pack walks. I did pretty much everything Caesar did that I saw on TV. I said, okay, I can do that. I've been doing this for, at that point, around 6 years, and I had worked with, I don't even know the number of dogs at that point. So I knew what to do, and I was easily able to get the dog in a completely new state of mind and get the dog to behave, which of course gives them that, oh my gosh, the dog has hope, and they saw it as, okay, we can work with this dog's issue. But the problem I found was then transferring that knowledge to these people, because even though I understood, because I watched so much of Caesar, I couldn't give them all of that knowledge unless they watched all of Caesar 10 plus times. And it's unrealistic to expect someone that works a full-time job, has a lot of other responsibilities, to spend countless hours watching a show where someone doesn't really teach people the science and the terminology of what to do. For instance, he would say, calm, assertive energy. And that's something that I told myself when I first started as well. When I would work with a dog, I would think to myself and I would feel insidewards and to reflect outwards calm, assertive energy. To me, I felt like that was something I needed to do to assert dominance. That's what I thought I had to do. Of course, there was many other techniques out there that I hadn't studied at that point, and I still thought that they would be good techniques, but I thought that the alpha-based technique was just the best. That's just what I thought at the time, right? And I came to find that transferring that knowledge to other people and expecting them to produce that energy the same way is unrealistic and hard for people to simply do just in general. Because if you're scared of a dog biting you, you can try to fake that confidence, but the dog's gonna understand. I did not fake anything from the get-go. I had the confidence. I've always been one of those people that if I saw someone do something, I thought I could do that. When I rode dirt bikes as a kid, I would see my dad do something, and the first thing that would go to my mind is, if he can do it, I can do it. And so that's exactly how I thought of it when I started training dogs. I thought he could do it, I could do it. But some people just aren't like that. And so it can be hard to transfer that knowledge. And some people, their definition of assertive is not the same. To me, my assertiveness wasn't dominance in my mind. I was thinking of it more as unbreakable, unmovable. I'm not gonna back down. I'm going to be assertive, asserting my energy outwards and letting people know, the dog in this case, that I'm here to stay. I'm not gonna move. That was how I saw it. Whereas other people, I found their definition of assertive was different. So then when they heard me say it and they tried to implicate that assertive energy, their energy wasn't the same. They weren't thinking unbreakable. They weren't thinking consistency. I'm going to do this until the dog stops their behavior. So I came to find that it was a lot harder to transfer my knowledge of dog training by just repeating things that I had written down in my little booklet and studied, because people just didn't quite understand those concepts. And that's what really led me to start working on educating myself on other techniques, because I wanted to be able to transfer this knowledge more effectively. And I knew that it just wasn't doing it with the way Cesar Millan was teaching. Some people, they could pick it up just fine, sure, but I would say on average, the most people that I worked with, they just weren't picking it up the same way. And so I had to then evolve myself. And so the more I studied a balanced-based and a scientific way of training dogs, the more I fell in love with it. I mean, I can't stress this enough. I really believed a lot of these alpha-based techniques. I mean, I believed them to a core. And with that, I mean, I wouldn't let dogs play a certain way. I wouldn't play tug of war with dogs. I wouldn't do so many things that he said not to do because it would escalate aggression. And once I started working and training dogs in a balanced-based technique and using playtime as a way to train dogs and using tug of war as a way to release energy, the more I enjoyed it. And when I think back of it now, I think, man, I missed out on so much opportunity to enjoy life with dogs because I thought I couldn't do a certain thing because it was going to cause aggression, or, to me, it was hard at first to realize that I did that to myself, but I don't regret any of it because it was all a learning experience. And I think I took more from the dog's behavior, because when I started studying an alpha-based technique, I studied not just Cesar Millan. I started studying dogs in the wild. I started studying, wild dog packs as they, went about their day. I studied wolf packs because I thought, well, this all correlates. This is all the same. So why don't I educate myself on dog behavior, dogs, and how their demeanor changes, and that means they're going to do a certain thing. For instance, when I see a dog do certain things, I know, oh, that dog might just be biting this person soon if they keep going. At this point, I do realize that I got a lot of benefit from it. You get so much benefits just by watching wild dogs and seeing how they behave together without humans around, right? And so I don't regret that part of it. I just wish I had continued my education sooner and I had kept working on educating myself on different techniques, because I found I have so much more fun. And this is something that I'm saying, I can't stress this enough. You will have so much more fun with your dog if you stop thinking about this dominance all the time. If you quit categorizing everything as dominance and just see it as a partnership. You're working with your dog for a common goal. And you can use treats to motivate your dog. You can use toys, and you can use playtime. You can use tug of war, and you can still have a fantastic dog. I have had aggressive dogs that came to me aggressive, and I started playing tug of war with them and doing playful things, and they're not aggressive because I'm still communicating to them in a similar way. I'm teaching them markers, which is something I did previously with Cesar's techniques. I just didn't quite understand the science and the terminology of markers at that point. I just knew that Cesar said if you don't agree with the dog's behavior, you get up and you address it and you stand there until the dog quits. That's being consistent, right? And that's one of me. I could have sat down for the 100th time, but if a dog does something that I just am not going to allow in the dog pack, I'm going to get up. It doesn't matter if it's been the 100th time and I just sat down. I'm going to get back up and I'm going to address the dog and I'm going to stop the dog and I'm going to say, nope, you can't do that. And that's consistency. And when I said to people, hey, you have to be strict on certain things, people also categorize strict as a different word. To me, I didn't see strict as what some people thought it as. Some people, they see strict and they think, oh, okay, I can't let dogs do anything. Or, to me, I saw it as I was being more strict on myself. When I said strict, it wasn't necessarily strict on them. Strict was me. I had to be strict on myself, that every time the dog did something, I was going to follow through and stop the dog. Every time I gave the dog a command, I was going to be strict on myself, and I was going to follow through no matter how tired I was, no matter how many times I wanted to give up. That was my mindset, is I have to do this because I made an obligation. I said that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it, right? And so to me, I found that terminology is huge. The more I've worked with other trainers as well, the more I've seen that they've dealt with similar things. And the communication when the dog comes home is very important. So if we can't relay our information to people effectively, it doesn't matter how much we work with the dog and how different the dog is with us. Because when the dog comes home, they're not going to be able to do it. Because one thing is for fact, is it doesn't matter how long your dog has worked with a trainer. Doesn't matter how good your dog was previously with a trainer. If you get the dog and you don't do what the trainer did to receive those same outcomes, the dog's not going to do the same thing. The dog's going to either slip back into their old habits, get new habits, because you're not communicating to them the same way the trainer did. So I found that using a balanced-based technique, learning that terminology, and properly educating people on how to use markers, how markers work in general, what even a marker is, to mark a moment in time when a dog did a behavior. So I found that balance-based techniques has so many more benefits to it for countless reasons. I'm not even going to start listing them all, but I am going to stress again on the main reason why I love it so much. I have more fun. I have so much more fun with my dogs. I enjoy so much more of the things the dogs do because I don't see it as dominance anymore. All right. I found that when I work with a dog, they understand better because I've spent more time conditioning them to markers instead of just doing it in the moment, which was my old style. Sure, I taught the dogs sits and my dogs were fantastic at commands, but I didn't get them as good at those commands as quickly because I wasn't doing the same techniques as a balance-based trainer would, or even a positive-only trainer would. And I've studied a lot of positive-only trainers as well. Victoria Stilwell was one of my favorites to watch. I've watched pretty much all of her videos as well, at least twice. I definitely did not study hers nearly as much, just because to me, I've found that some dogs are past the point where positive only is going to work. And I have met people, certified trainers that would put a dog down instead of correcting the dog. They would say, no, that dog, we can't help that dog. All we can do is, control the situation so the dog doesn't bite or put the dog down. Whereas if I took the dog, or Nate took the dog, or even Caesar took the dog, they would be able to communicate to the dog using proper corrections and timed corrections to teach that dog that this behavior is not acceptable. And if you do this behavior, this is going to happen. And the dog will learn that, okay, I don't like this discomfort on the leash pop. And so I'm going to stop this behavior. Now, the minute they stop the behavior, you can start to focus on giving them positive reinformation with a treat. And you can go back to using your positive reinforcement. Because the dog is at a certain point in their life that they have a learned behavior, that they can do this behavior with no repercussions. They can bite someone and that person's gonna back away. So they've learned that all they have to do is show their teeth. Hopefully they don't have just one. And all they gotta do is bite this person and they're gonna get their way. And that's why sometimes I use what people call the Superman technique, and I just let them bite it out. Something I originally learned from Cesar Millan when he would work with little chihuahuas that were crazy. I like to put a bite glove on. I don't personally like them biting my hands. I've been bit many times. So I would put a bite glove on and I would let them bite it out. And over time, they get learned helplessness. They see that this biting isn't going to work. And they quit. They stop biting. And they start to think, what can I do if the biting doesn't work? And once they stop, it gives you an opportunity to then mark that behavior. Then they learn that, for one, the biting is not going to work. Doesn't matter how much I bite this person, it's not getting the effect that I thought it would. So they stop. Then they learn, if they don't do the biting, this person's going to hand me food, hand me a treat. And they're going to think, wow, why would I bite someone? It doesn't work. And if I don't, they're going to give me food. So now you're coming at it two different directions to teach the dog, don't do this, or you're going to have some discomfort. Or you could not do that, and I'm going to feed you. I'm going to pay you with some food. So it's a great way to communicate to them that that behavior is not acceptable, and you're not hurting the dog doing that way. I personally have no quarrels with correcting the dog. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You don't have to correct your dog. But think of it as a wild pack. Wild packs, they correct their dogs. You've got dogs playing together all the time. And when a dog does something that another dog doesn't like, they'll correct each other. They bite each other. Their tone gets different. Their growl becomes different. Their whole demeanor and energy changes. They correct the dog. Typically, if they're a well-balanced dog, they're going to then stop what they're doing and stare at the dog that they just corrected, communicating to them through their eyes that what you just did, I didn't appreciate, I didn't like, don't do that, right? So dogs bite each other all the time. Even well-balanced dogs, they bite each other and they correct each other all the time. So what's really the difference between a human correcting a dog? Now, one thing I've also steered away from is Cesar's technique of prodding dogs. So that was something that I definitely felt was fine in the beginning. I thought, okay, he did it. It's fine. I can do it. And yes, I still think you can do it. But there's a big but here. How you do it, why you do it, when you do it, right? How you do it is the biggest importance. So if you're angry, you're upset, you're frustrated, don't do it, right? Because if you're putting out the wrong energy, you're not doing, for one, what Cesar said. Cesar said to do it calmly. Cesar always stressed on not doing it out of aggression, being neutral. And I have met so many people that don't do that. They are getting upset and they're using these techniques wrong. Second thing is when you're going to do it, right? Some dogs, they are a disposition already to dislike hands. For instance, I rescued this husky and he had probably been hit or beat. And whenever a male touched him in his region right here, I would not doubt that someone used an alphabet technique on him or just straight kicked him. Because when I would touch him in that area, he would want to bite me. And if I hadn't leashed him or, used proper strategic moves like putting him on a treadmill and leashing him on the treadmill, making him run forward, he would have definitely bit me. So this dog, no way, I'm not gonna fucking prod him. I'm not gonna correct him like that. He already doesn't like it. He already wants to bite me. I don't want him to go to another person and him to have more fear, of that. So what I actually did was completely opposite. I never corrected him right there. I never prodded him. I put him on that treadmill. I had him walking straight, and I would touch and pet him there. And if he would try to bite me, which he did a lot in the beginning, I'd say my no, and I would stop petting him. He'd start walking again, and I would start touching him again. Over time, he learned, for one, of course, it wasn't working. His trying to bite me was not stopping me, but he learned that I wasn't hurting him. And it got to the point where I didn't need him to be leashed up, and I could touch him all I wanted to. And he knew that this guy wasn't going to hurt him. And that was very, very, very important. So your energy is really important. Why are you doing it, or when you are doing it, is really important, because some dogs, they don't need that, and you shouldn't be using that with them. And then, of course, how often you do it. If you're always correcting them like that, but you're never giving them love and encouragement by touching them in that areas, even if you don't do it wrong, they're going to start to just expect that you're going to be doing that when you reach for them. They're going to anticipate that, oh, he's reaching down, he's going to be correcting me, even if you're not trying to correct him, just because you did it too much. You corrected him so many times right there without reaffirming that that area can still be used for love and pets, that they're going to have now a negative association with you reaching down, even if you're just trying to pet them at one point, because maybe you just spent way too much time correcting them in that area. And that's my biggest reasons, really, why I've started to steer away from it, because I don't want them to associate people's hands with a negative thing. Again, I still think that in a moment, for instance, your dog gets in a fight, I think it's definitely okay for you to step in and use your hands. You can use a water hose if you have to. You just have to do it right by sticking it actually in their mouth, because the key to this is by cutting off their oxygen. And if you spray the water in their mouth, they get to the point where, okay, I have to breathe. I got to let go of this dog. But if you don't have a water hose around, which definitely happens at times, there's nothing wrong with you having to use your hands. But in this case, I would use my hands by lifting up on the leash. And certain other cases, I still think that it would be okay to use your hand, but you have to do it in moderation. And I cannot stress this enough. You can't rely on it. You can't. You have to learn other ways. You have to start using leashes, tools, like an e-collar works really well. I know some people are not okay with e-collars, and that's okay. But again, if you use the e-collar correctly, because it's not about the tool, it's how you use the tool. And if you use the tool correctly, you can have a dog actually like an e-collar. For instance, if you use a vibration setting on a collar and you give the dog a treat every single time, that dog's not going to be, oh, that collar sucks. That dog's going to start wagging their tail. Oh yeah, put that collar on me. It's not the tool, it's how you use the tool. Same with the prong collar. People use prong collars wrong all the time. The biggest thing I've found with the prong collar is people put a prong collar on and the dog doesn't stop pulling, but the dog doesn't pull as much. And so the person thinks it's working, awesome. This prong collar was the best investment. They take their dog on a couple walks, and next thing they notice, the prong collar has actually started to embed into the flesh, and it's actually caused a wound. And it's because you allowed the dog to pull still. And that prong collar slowly pushed into their skin. Prong collars are not designed to let the dog pull, even a little bit. Because the more the dog pulls, the more pressure gets pushed into it, and that's when you cause an issue. And the same goes if you yank too hard. You can't do that. The goal of a prong collar is to, for one, represent a dog bite. It's just like dog teeth. It is also designed to distribute that weight and that pressure evenly around the neck. So when you do the correction, it has very little, no chance of crushing the trachea like a leash does or a slip lead does. So it distributes that weight evenly. And it makes your correction a more impactful correction. So if you have a prong collar on, really you shouldn't have to pull them harder. In fact, you should be able to pull less hard, much less hard. And if you time it and do it correctly, the dog stops. And once the dog stops pulling, then you can reward. Another issue I've found with people is the dog will be pulling and they try to just yank on it. They pull back on it. And that's not something what you want to do. Instead, what you want to do is while there's tension, right, the dog starts to pull, you then release the tension. So I always just drop my hand forward and then I pull back, right, to make sure that I have a good pop in that sense. You want it to be a meaningful correction. Another thing that Nate had said at one point is, if you think about it like someone that's rich, right? They have a lot of money. They get pulled over for a speeding ticket. They don't care, right? Which is kind of the sad thing about these kind of laws is they really only affect the poor people, because a rich person, they could just pay that fee. It doesn't matter, right? They don't care and they go right back to speeding. So think of it like that in a dog's sense. So if a dog has a high bank account in terms of maybe pain just isn't a big deal, or maybe the motivation to attack another dog is really high, right? Maybe they've been attacked before, and so they're really motivated to attack that other dog, and they're getting aggressive. And you go, no, and you barely pull on that. That is like a very, very cheap ticket. They don't care. Don't give a shit. You have to give a meaningful pull. I like to always say, try to match the dog's intensity. And if you feel you've gone too hard, bring it down a few levels. Nate also says something similar when it comes to an e-collar. If you're using an e-collar, same thing. You try to match what you need to use. You don't want to go too high. So you don't want to jump to 100 on a dog that doesn't need it, right? You want to go with 6. If that doesn't work, jump up maybe another 6. If that works, jump down another 3. And if it does work still, jump down another 1, right? If it doesn't work, oh, I know I found the threshold that I need. Jump back up 1. This is the number I need. It's going to get the dog to stop. That's all you need. And then you get to then put the dog into situations where you can then condition the dog not to do that behavior. And if the dog's doing it out of fear, you then need to start building up the dog's confidence. There is so much to learn about dog training, and that's why I've always continued my training. Originally, it was only alpha-based techniques. I studied the heck out of alpha-base, and I wasn't just Caesar, it was a lot of other people. Caesar's just the one that comes to mind the most because he's the one I studied the most in the beginning. But as I grew, I learned that, wow, there is so much more out there that I could learn. Let's keep educating myself. And even to this day, I'm going to continue educating myself. I don't care 10 years from now. You best know I'm going to continue educating myself. I'm going to continue watching new things. I'm going to continue looking up new trainers, seeing what new techniques people are trying. I love to learn from others' mistakes because that's what a wise person does. They learn from others' mistakes. They don't just learn from their own. And trust me, I've learned a lot from my own, but I've learned more from other people's mistakes. So the more you can educate yourself, the better. And so that's one of the main reasons why I've continued to rely on the balance-based technique. And the reason why I now feel that one is the best way to communicate with dogs, because you can communicate with them so effectively and get a really reliable dog. And you don't have to dominate the dog all the time. You don't have to constantly wait the dog out like a positive only trainer has to do if they're working on certain issues. And of course, there's certain issues that you'll never be able to just wait out. And that's why I also want to use the balance-based technique, because I want to help those dogs that people can't help. Because there's so many dogs out there. I mean, I've gotten so much hate from balance-based techniques, and you're welcome to hate me. I don't care. I love dogs, and I love them so much that I'll do anything I can to help them. And that means bettering myself, learning what works, and doing what works best, right? So I don't care if you hate me for wanting to pop a leash or use an e-collar or to correct a dog. You know, that's your prerogative. You're welcome to have that opinion. You can hate me as much as you want. I love you, okay? And I hope the best for you. I've met many people that have thrown hate my way, and that's fine. You're welcome to it. But I know for a fact I'll be able to help dogs that those kind of people will never be able to help, because they're not willing to do what needs to be done to communicate to that dog properly. And if it's because your emotions, you get sad because you're hurting a dog, that's okay. I understand that. I don't like hurting a dog, and that's why I try never to do a correction too hard, because I don't want to hurt the dog. My goal is to snap them out of the mindset, which is something Caesar taught, because it's not about hurting the dog. In fact, if you're hurting the dog or causing fear, you're doing it wrong, right? That's not the goal. The goal is to mark a moment in time that lets the dog know that that behavior is not acceptable. And if they continue that behavior, that this is what the result's gonna be, a pop on the leash or what have you. So to me, I found that balance-based techniques are great. I found that positive only training has its limitations. And it's just not going to get you the results that you need for certain dogs. And for instance, I've had people come to me and ask me, how do you fix that? I've had these dogs that were fighting for 5 years. I can't fix this issue. And I tell them, well, study a balance-based technique. Study the 4 quadrants of opera conditioning. Start marking these unwanted behaviors with timed corrections. And right away they go, oh, I don't believe in that kind of training. Well, you'll never be able to fix that behavior then, because clearly your positive only hasn't worked. You've been doing it for 5 years and it hasn't worked. So if you want my help, you're going to have to change the way you communicate with the dog. And if you don't want to change, you don't want to do those kind of things, then you just have to accept that you're not going to be able to fix those issues. And you're going to have to accept that you're going to have to live with those bad behaviors, those unwanted behaviors for the rest of your dog's life, or get rid of the dog, sadly. And that's why I will just simply not accept that as the primary form of training, because I'm not going to give up on a dog. I truly believe there's no dog beyond help when we learn to be true best friends to man's best friend. Because on average, dogs will do just about anything for you. And of course, I understand that some dogs have neurological problems, they've been improperly bred, and they have health or certain issues that the dog has. But I still believe even those dogs do have hope. Now, how much hope they have and how far you can get with the dog definitely is debatable, and of course dependent on the trainer and the person working with the dog. But I think even the worst case scenarios, the dogs that are having issues neurologically, I think that there's still something that we could do as a human to at least limit those behaviors. And if that means you have to change around the lifestyle of the dog to fit that problem the dog might have, then that's what you got to do. But I still believe there's no dog beyond help. I truly believe that, so much so that I'm willing to take on any dog. I'm willing to take on dogs that have killed other dogs. I'm willing to take on dogs that have killed shit. If the dog killed a person, I'll still take that fucking dog. I don't care. I'm not afraid of dogs. I've been bit many times. It's not something I like, but I'm willing to be bit. To me, that's part of the job. I've taken that as just part of reality. Frankly, when you take any dog, there's a possibility that you're going to get bit. It just doesn't matter what dog it is. There's a possibility of it. So I've condoned myself to realize that. That's not the right word. I've realized, though, that that's just simply facts. It's a possibility. And when you work with aggressive dogs, it might happen. And that's why when I had someone ask me if I would work with Bane, a Caucasian Shepherd at about 170 pounds, showing a lot of aggression over his food, showing a lot of resource guarding. They labeled it as aggression, but really he was being a guard dog that he was. He wasn't really being aggressive, though many people label it that way, which is another example of people's different definitions. I've had people say my dog's aggressive and the dog show up and he's just anxious. Dog's not aggressive, dude. That's not aggression. I'll show you aggression. And to me, he wasn't aggressive towards new people. He was showing resource guarding. And he was doing what that breed was bred to do. He was being very territorial, and he was protecting his home, and he was being very territorial of his owners, and he was trying to protect his owners. But he wasn't aggressive. He wasn't an inherently aggressive dog. If the owner stepped on his tail, he would whine and he would move. When I got him, I had him for about a month, and I accidentally stepped on him and he didn't bite me. He whined. He wasn't aggressive. He was showing that he was trying to guard his family, his home. So I had to then communicate to him that his job was not to guard me all the time. Sadly, his owners weren't able to continue this training, and that's okay. He was definitely not in the right home. They loved the fuck out of him. They were great people, a great family, but they had a tiny backyard. They lived in the city. This was a dog that, for one's huge, 170. He was bred to be on, land and protecting livestock. So he wasn't thriving in that home. And no matter what they did, they could have definitely got him to where he wasn't showing that resource guarding. But no matter what they did, he wouldn't have been able to thrive like he does now. And so when they decided they were going to gift him to me and give him up to me, I just knew that that was what I had to do. And it wasn't even a thought to me. It's not something I do all the time. And if someone tries to give me their dog, I say no all the time. But this dog, it was a little different. I had bonded with this dog for one. But the biggest thing is I just knew that it wasn't the right environment for the dog. And so without a second thought, I told them, yes, I'll take your dog. And I love the fuck out of that dog. He has given me so much growth, not just in dog training, but also in myself, because I had to become a better person as well. And he is just a fantastic dog, a wonderful breed. And I've had people ask about that breed and even talk about getting that breed. And I always stress to them, if you want a Caucasian Shepherd, just do your research. Study these dogs, because I had a lot of experience when I took him on, and I can see how so many people, like this family before him, would take a dog because of their beauty, their looks, and then get a dog that they just are not the right suit for. And that's exactly what happened with him. It just wasn't the right family. So if you're going to get any breed, you need to educate yourself on that breed, just like you need to educate yourself on training practices when you're going to think about rescuing dogs with issues. So I know this was mainly about balance-based strategies and what strategies we like to use, and I kind of went out on tangent on a few things, and I hope you don't mind. But the biggest thing that I'm trying to stress here today is why I like to use the balance-based technique, why I want to encourage people that are using an alpha-based technique to better themselves, to educate themselves on another way, and to learn to relearn, which is even harder for people to do, to relearn that there are other ways to communicate with their dog, better ways to communicate with your dog. Not everything is dominance. You don't have to dominate your dog all the time. You shouldn't dominate your dog all the time. Everything your dog does is not dominance, and you can 100% train the same dogs with a balance-based technique. I used to think that certain dogs could only be saved if you used an alpha-based technique, and how wrong I was. Now, I still think some alpha-based strategies come in handy with certain situations, but I do not think that that is the key primary focus that people should be training. I don't think that that is what most people in general should be training or doing. I think that they should learn how to communicate with their dog effectively. They should learn how the way they're communicating with them and the energy they give off is very important. But I don't think that alpha-based techniques is, the save-all and the best of the best in terms of strategies. It definitely is not. It has some great benefits to it, sure, but that's not something that I think people should thrive to train under or to focus on. I think that you would have so much more fun, and this is off of my personal experience as well. because again, I can't stress it enough. I have so much more fun. I enjoy my time with dogs so much more. And I loved dogs beforehand too. I still enjoyed the fuck out of hanging out with dogs. But I love it so much more now that I have gotten that out of my mindset and I've learned that that's just not true. It's become so much more enjoyable. I'm able to do so much more with them because I'm not thinking, oh, this is dominance or the dog's doing something in dominance. I'm able to just realize that the dog's being a dog and I'm being a human. So I need to be smarter with the way I work with you. And you can have so much more fun with your dog if you get that out of your mindset and understand that balance-based strategies have huge benefits to it. And you can in fact work with even the most aggressive dogs using a primarily balance-based strategy and just simply teaching your dogs with proper markers that certain behaviors are unwanted and that when they don't do certain behaviors they get rewarded. And with fearful dogs, again, you want to build up that confidence. So I hope this has helped understand more about what we're about, which is a balance-based strategy, focusing on the dog's needs. If the dog needs more positive reinforcement, that's what we're going to do. We're going to spend our time doing positive. And if that's what you want to train your dog under, we're happy to do just positive as well. But if the dog has certain issues, I'll tell you right now, you're not going to be able to fix it with positive only. And I don't want to help you because I'm not going to be able to help you. And so I have no reason to waste not only my time, but your time, or your money. And so there's just no reason to do that. Okay. But there's plenty of other trainers out there that will happily take your money and say they'll fix your dog and they're not going to. And you're going to be the one left saying, shit, fuck, I fucked up. Right. So, take it from a learning experience if that does happen to you. Some people will say anything to take your money. I'm not one of those people. I don't want to work with you if you don't want to follow through and do what you have to do. I don't want to work with you if you don't understand that dogs are situational and that no matter how much I work with your dog, it doesn't matter if you don't follow through and do the same things. You're not the student I want. Because you clearly don't understand dogs and you don't understand that you are the primary one that has to learn. And you are the one that has to follow through when your dog comes home. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day and just know I love you guys all and give your dog some love from me. And if you're one of those alpha-based trainers, give them a treat from me and start educating yourself on the benefits of balance-based strategies, and I guarantee you're gonna find that you like it more too. I don't see how you couldn't. You will have so much more fun. You'll enjoy it so much more. So you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye for now.